Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Today we have Tom Doran, and he is going to be presenting on NAV 2018 tips and tricks. And we just want to let you know that we do record all of our webinars, so this will be available on our website later this week for you to review again or share with any of your colleagues. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask the questions in the questions box, and toward the end of the webinar we will get those called out for you. So now I will turn it over to Tom and he will begin our presentation.
Thanks, Angie. Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning to those of you still on the West Coast, I guess. Today we're going to review just a few tips and tricks. It's a fast-paced review of a session that I presented at NAV Focus. It was a lot of interaction, seemed to be very well received, and so we felt like we wanted to make sure that we provided it to a broader group of folks. So there's an awful lot of material to cover, but certainly we wanted to take questions. So if you have questions, please do let me know that, and then I'm going to get rolling here. So I am having a little trouble advancing my slides. All right, so I've got a switch here. I'm a victim of my hardware today, gang. I apologize. So Angie, are we seeing the notes? Is
Correct.
that what's happening?
Yes.
All right.
Not
How about
anymore.
now? Better?
Not anymore. Better.
All right. Here we go. All right. So I already introduced myself. So the first section is Microsoft Flow. So a lot of people have been sort of buzzing about this product. We see this as a great addition to the workflow templates that are already included inside of your NAV. And so I'm going to walk through, I'm going to give you a brief overview. We're going to talk a little bit about how Flow could be used with Dynamics NAV or Business Central. And hopefully you'll leave with just enough knowledge to be able to set up some simple flows on your own and begin to play with this product. So Flow at its simplest level, and for those of us that are some of the old programming group, you know, if this, then that kind of an action. So if a situation or an event occurs, then do something. So I'll give you a few examples here, but you know, one of the ones that seem to relate to a lot of folks is you know, the robotics classes that many of our children are involved in school. And so when we think about how we teach these young people how to build their robots, it's using a very similar building block. So there's action blocks that control the program. So if I push the lever for the controller, go forward. If I pull it back, go backwards. Same idea happens in Flow. So if I do this, then do that. And it uses a very simple action block oriented development process. So it's something that anyone can do, and I think that using the Lego Mindstorms approach, you know, many of you, if you get stuck, you can go grab your 5th and 6th grade kids or grandkids, and they can help you through it. So, you know, the idea behind all of this is Microsoft said, look, we need to be able to help average users be able to leverage and automate their systems more effectively without the need of getting sort of the high dollar programming resources or getting their partners involved. And so, you know, the example and the joke we've used a lot is, you know, what would Chuck do? And so obviously Chuck doesn't write computer code. He simply uses intimidation to get his way. But in this case, Microsoft has developed this suite of products which they call Power Apps, and Flow is one piece of the Power Apps suite. So when we go in this case, we're looking at an example of a Flow control box. And it's basically saying that when a file is created in Dropbox, I want you to email someone and let them know. So for those of you that know our friend Steve Waltz, Steve will testify to the fact that he has received hundreds and hundreds of emails as we have demonstrated Flow to various audiences. But you know, basically all we need to know is our Dropbox sign in. It's going to begin to monitor a particular Dropbox folder. And then when there is a change, it is going to send an email to the person that we have identified. So lots of different opportunities to use Flow in our Microsoft Dynamics environments. We can send notifications. We could synchronize files. We could use them to collect data. We could automate and enhance approval processes. So, you know, many of us have heard the old adage, garbage in, garbage out. And Flow is one example of an area where we can help to ensure that our business processes are followed correctly the first time. So, you know, another example is marketing. And so in this case, you know, maybe we want to monitor a Twitter account for a thought leader, and we want to update our CRM or our back-end office system. And so we can monitor those social accounts, and we can really use that tool to empower our users, our marketing programs to do more. And so when we begin to think about all of the different areas that we could leverage this tool, I think you'll begin to get some creative ideas. Now, what makes this really powerful is Microsoft's initiatives around the common data model and the common data service, which is going to allow us to integrate not only within the Microsoft ecosystem, but far beyond. And so when we begin to look at Flow, if you go out to Microsoft.com or your favorite search engine, which I'm sure is Bing, and you start to type in Microsoft Flow, you can see that there are bunches of templates already built. So if you wanted to play around, there's no better place than to go out, sign up for the free account, and grab a couple of these templates and just start to work with them a little bit. There's also a lot of connectors that are already set up and ready to go. So SharePoint, OneDrive, Act. And so you'll see all kinds of connectors that are available, and many of which are free. Now, Microsoft's done a lot with what they call the freemium business model. So you can get started using Microsoft Flow for Office 365. It isn't going to cost you anything. And it'll run 2,000 flows per month, and it'll update on those, you know, every few minutes. If you are in a business environment, or you're looking at a flow that needs to run more often, or we're going to do a higher volume across a month, then you're going to have either a $5 or a $15 option. And you know, you'll just have to play with these a little bit to figure out which one works best for you. I would say that it is probably reasonable that in most of our businesses, we should expect to use at least the $5 option. And then there's all kinds of premium connectors. And so I'm not going to read all these off to you, but you can connect to lots of different services. And so, you know, one of those, as you can see, is MailChimp on the sort of mid outer right of that screen. And so, you know, if we wanted to look at how people were interacting with the emails that we were sending out through our email automation tools, Flow is a way to interface with MailChimp and to provide maybe our sales team updates when people interact with our emails. Just giving you a bit of a feel for some of the differences. I'm not going to read all of this off to you. This slideshow will be available and you can download it off of our site to give you a better feel for what's going on. Apologize for my phone there. I should have shut my ringer off. So then once you get your Flow dashboard, you can manage these and have them active or inactive, which is one way to help control, you know, how often a flow is running, or if you're trying to sort of throttle your usage to keep yourself within the $5 instead of the $15. So you can add these, you can share these. So if you have flows that you want to push around your organization, or you have a user group that you're involved with, maybe your regional chapter of NAV, you can share these amongst yourselves and really leverage everyone's creativity. So where are flows available? And they're available now in SharePoint, so you can trigger new flows right from your SharePoint site. You can also trigger flows from NAV. So you can see here that it's on the Sales and Relationship Managers Role Center. You'll also see them on the item card and other places inside of your NAV. You can build and run flows from within Excel also. So if you have a sheet and you want to monitor updates, you can do that quickly and easily. Within NAV, I'm just giving you one sort of an example of a trigger that we might want to have when a record is modified. So fairly simple connections. So then some of the questions that we've had, you know, why use Microsoft Flow versus the NAV workflows? And there's a couple of drivers. The NAV workflows are a little more complicated. Not that you can't make Flow a pretty advanced tool, but the NAV workflows really do require a little bit more technical sophistication to get them set up, and they require more advanced admin rights inside of your NAV. So I would say, in our opinion, Microsoft Flow is sort of workflow for the masses, and NAV workflow is workflows developed and managed by your IT staff. So when we think about how to get creative with Flow, I hope some of you recognize these little buttons as Amazon dash buttons. And so the concept here is that you get this button from Amazon, and you see the picture there. You can put it on your washing machine, maybe next to wherever you keep your paper towels, or on a fridge where you keep your Gatorade. And when you realize you've grabbed the last Gatorade, if you push the button, it will automatically sync with your Amazon Prime account. It will order your predetermined amount of Gatorade, and 2 days later it will show up on your door. And you know, so in a consumer environment, that all makes a lot of sense. But how might we be able to apply this in a business environment? Well, many of us are familiar with Kanban systems, and so as we begin to manage our inventory, or potentially manage our close customer relationship, vendor managed inventory, what if we were able to replace those cards with buttons? So no different than the Amazon button. What if we triggered our button to preload the requisition worksheet? Or in a very trusted relationship, automatically trigger a purchase order? So there are several buttons designed for business that would allow us to do that. So we could trigger a PO. in the example I have on a screen here, maybe we want to have buttons inside of our conference rooms to automatically request technical support from our IT staff. So again, using the flow. So on the left, set the action. On the right, what's the action I want you to take? And so we can begin to automate those calls for support and get things moving a little bit more quickly. Flic is another great button, so a little bit less expensive. We find it to be pretty useful. There's a Flic button. There's also a, I'm going to flip through these pretty quick. Some updates coming for Flow, so you can begin to automate these. They'll run a little bit more often. They've also included some email repairs so that if we've had a flow that's errored out, it'll notify the person that owns that flow so they can go in and take a look at that. Some sign-offs with SharePoint and other documents so that if we want approvals, we can begin to request sign-offs. We can also monitor the status of those and create flows right off of that to escalate our request. So there's several areas where you can get more information on Flow. I hope this has piqued your interest on Flow, but in an effort to get this all done in an hour, I'm going to move a little bit more quickly here. So the next area is RapidStart. And so when we begin to look at RapidStart Services with Microsoft, I hope that you're going to pick up a couple of nuggets here that encourages you to use these tools a little bit more often. So a lot of people think about RapidStart when they consider setting up their NAV for the very first time. But really, when we begin to look at how RapidStart can help us manage our data, maybe roll out a new ISV solution, I think you're going to find that there are other uses for these tools than might have immediately been apparent. And so RapidStart Services starts out with several components: a configuration worksheet, a configuration questionnaire, and configuration templates that all combine to create a configuration package. And so we find that RapidStart can save a lot of setup time. It certainly improves the quality of the data. And when the use of RapidStart makes sense, it dramatically reduces the cost of data conversion. So, a couple of ideas here. We can, set up a new company, configure an add-on, setting up test companies, all ways to help us better utilize our NAV, and a little bit more flexible ways of us doing it rather than relying on our IT department or our NAV partner. So where we access RapidStart Services is through administration, application setup, and then RapidStart Services. And it'll look slightly different if you're a Business Central user, but if you just search on configuration, you'll see all these same areas come up, and so you can access them in your solution on the web just the way we do on premise. A couple of pointers, I suppose, but you'll see my little red arrow there. If we're using dimensions, we want to make sure that we have that column shown and that we check it so that when it pushes out the data, it automatically is looking for those dimension values to be entered. So we can build our worksheet and we can add the tables that we expect to use. We can manage those and remove them if we choose. And then we can begin, as we see, we've got our customer table there. So table ID 18. And then we can go in and, let me back up, and get the related tables. So you can see at the top, I've circled. So when I'm beginning to manage data, as some of you are aware, the table relationships inside of NAV are really important. And so we want to make sure that when we're populating data, we're populating all the necessary related data. So when we go out and get a customer table, like I've got there in the first line, when I say get the related tables, it populates the rest of this to ensure that I'm going to get in my RapidStart worksheet all the tables that need to have data in them to successfully do an import. So we've got a couple of other fields. So, promoted tables, and I'm not going to read all of this. Responsible IDs are handy. So, as we begin to manage our data, when we build these packages, we can actually assign a user to a particular task. So, we may have an inventory manager handling our inventory items, but we may have a sales manager handling all of our customer information. And so you can assign various users to various parts of the data and then make sure that they're getting that work completed. So then once we go through, and when you download this, there's an awful lot going on, but we bring this into our worksheet, and then we can delete the lines, the extra duplicate lines that may have come through when we brought in various different components. And then we can start to walk through the process. And so I've tried to lay this out on the screen so that you can follow it easily on your own. So it's basically, 7 easy steps. But I think that you're going to find that if you take a little data out and you make some edits to that set of data and then you bring it back in, you'll begin to get the hang of this pretty quickly. So we can also determine whether customer information or particular fields are mandatory, and if we want to skip a relationship check. So, a common example is salesperson code. So, we may not know which salespeople we're going to assign to particular accounts. Maybe we've worked a trade show and we've got a big trade show list and we want to bring these in and start using them inside our NAV relationship management. And so I may skip the relationship check on these new accounts because I don't know which salesperson's going to be assigned. So I don't want it to actually force me to enter that just yet. So you can develop these questionnaires, and the questionnaires are handy. So this gives a little bit of narrative behind how to fill out the various areas in your RapidStart worksheet. And so if you have instructions or tips and tricks, you can build these questionnaires out, and users find it really helpful. So just an example there on the screen of how we want to walk through those questionnaires. And so, so then once we walk through in our master data there, you can see how we can determine whether or not we want to autofill some data automatically. And if we have mappings that exist, so we can automatically map some of this. But what you get as a result is essentially, a fancy Excel worksheet. But all of your fields are then laid out across your worksheet, and then you can fill in this data. So as I say, if you were at a trade show and you wanted to bring in a bunch of this new contact information, we could fill in, we could lay in the Excel spreadsheet that we got from our trade show. We could lay it up against this one, format it so that it lines up with our fields here, and then you just import that data right back into NAV, and your contacts will be set up. So a couple of things to consider here. So if you get into really, really large data sets, let's say we're going north of 10,000 records, we may, there are some performance things that we'll want to consider. The RapidStart tools are awesome. They are not a one-size-fits-all, and so you'll want to play with that just a little bit. because it can run an awful long time. So the next consideration is network performance, right? So if your network is really zippy and your data set isn't completely enormous, then RapidStart probably works great. But if you get a really large data set on a network that tends to have some latency issues, then we may need to reconsider how we're going to use that tool. And then other logic that might be desired upon import. So, XML ports and data ports still have a role when we want to build logic into the data that we're bringing into our system. So, RapidStart is a great tool set, and we are big believers, but it is not always the right solution for every problem. So the next area, and I referred to it a little bit in our conversation about setting things up, but relationship management. This is a hugely underutilized area of the system. Many users don't even know it exists. And so just a quick refresher, but a NAV role center for a sales and relationship manager. When people think about CRM, and there are more and more companies evaluating how they're going to use CRM or how they're currently using the CRM that they purchased somewhere else. And I would just remind each of you as NAV users, you already own this tool. So it'll help you manage your pipelines. It'll give you the nice sales funnel. It'll help your salespeople, sales managers, customer service folks get a view of what they need to follow up on for opportunities and better manage your overall sales process. It has some great Outlook integration. So, previously, say pre-NAV 2017, one of the big missing links was the ability to see our contacts and interact with our NAV data right within Outlook. Microsoft has done an awful lot there to integrate that. So you can see in the couple of arrows I've provided in the upper right and in the circles I give you in the center, it will automatically call this sales quote 1003. So if I click on that document link, it's going to open up the quote right inside of Outlook. In the upper right, you can see new. So if I'm interfacing with a prospect and maybe it's time to actually create a quote, I could create a quote, I could create an invoice, I could create a sales order, all right from Outlook. And so salespeople find that to be one of the things they've been looking for a long time out of NAV, and now you have it. We do complete contact management, so you can see the dark bold are the different companies, and beneath each one of those are all the contacts. And so we do full contact management. We can do profile questionnaires. So as we manage the demographics around our particular contact companies and our contact people, we can begin to gather the data that helps us do a better job with our marketing. It also helps our customer service and sales people so that when they get in touch with one of our contacts, it prompts them on the things we've come to know about them over the years we've been doing business. And so I find it tremendously helpful. We work with hundreds and hundreds of people, and I try really hard to remember important information about each one of the folks that choose to do business with us. But this reminder, when I have someone on the phone, that they're married and they've got a couple of kids, and maybe they like tennis. Those are all tips that help us have a little bit more personal conversation, and customers really appreciate it. So as you can see here on a new customer card, we've got our next new customer for our contact, and the lines down below there. So requires government clearance, staff size, industry, sales volume. Those are all the answers to the profiles I was just talking about before. So it helps us set up our new contacts and our new customers and have that information at a glance when we bring them up on the screen. We can add people to segments. So if we have got newsletters or we've got industry trade groups, we can manage all of that within our NAV. We can also manage the sales cycles. So everybody gets excited about that sales funnel I showed you on the Roll Center, but that all starts from managing a sales cycle. So we can have various sales cycles based on the different types of customers or prospects we might work with, and we can help our salespeople move through those sales cycles to better manage towards a successful conclusion. So then we can manage all of our opportunities, we can track all of those, we can keep our notes so that anybody that looks at an opportunity can see what step we're at and who we had a conversation with last. And then we can have to-dos and interactions that help remind us, what are we supposed to do next? So as I build my opportunity pipeline, I can have to-dos that help me stay on task when I come in each day. We can have marketing campaigns all built right into the system. So, whether it's email marketing or trade shows or postcards or whatever you do in your business, Microsoft NAV will help support you in that process and help you track the ROI on your campaign. So we can set filters. And this is where the fact that it's integrated right into your NAV makes the biggest difference. So as I build a campaign, I can begin to use the profile questions that I asked earlier, but at the very bottom, you see the value entries. It doesn't matter which CRM you might be considering. Nobody's going to have better information than your NAV relationship management because it's able to tap into your NAV database. So if I want to start to track, tell me all the customers that used to buy from us that haven't bought in the last 90 days. Tell me everybody who bought this product because I think they'll be interested in this new product that we're introducing. Because we're deeply integrated inside of your NAV, we are better able to create those marketing campaigns based on our NAV data. So there's my follow-up. So when I come in, I can see all my opportunities, what value they're at, and what I need to do next. It can also track my to-do list. So, when I come in during the day, I am living between my opportunities and my to-dos. And then, setting up Outlook. This used to be a little bit more complicated. Now they've got the assisted setup, so it's a lot easier than it ever used to be in the past. That takes you just through a quick wizard. So you can see this is something that I could actually do and required almost no assistant. And I think it's something that I would encourage all of you to take a good look at. So the next area is report layouts, which I tend to call word templates. Many of you have had customized forms over the years, and Microsoft has heard that loud and clear. And so what they've done is they've built out several reports that you could begin to customize on your own. So if you think about sales invoices or purchase orders or many of the common forms that we want to edit inside of our NAV, we can begin to do that now using the report layouts. So you go to report layout selection like I have up at the top, you pick the report ID that you want to modify, and that's going to bring that into your custom layouts. So you can see on the top I have my sales invoice, and I'm going to click new like I do on the bottom. And what that does is it brings in a new layout, and we want to choose Word in this case. So I'm going to back up for a second. You can see the first line it brings in, it says, okay, I've got a sales invoice, and this is the RDLC layout. When I create the new one, I want to insert a Word layout. And so once I've done that, it allows us to export or edit the layout in Word. And so once you're inside of Word, and this took me a minute, so I'll share this tip. You need to go to your ribbon and customize the ribbon and add the developer tab. So it's in there. It doesn't display for most folks, and so you want to add that tab. So you should see, just like I do here, it says File, Home, Insert, Design. You need the developer tab. And in that case, then you click into design mode and you select the XML mapping pane. And once you've done that, then it's a word merge. And so in the body, you can see that I've got my standard, sort of word merge look. And on the right, I've got my XML mapping. And as you can see, about 4 down there, it says show me the Dynamics NAV fields. Now, mini sales invoice you see on the end there. I learned this, it was news to me, and so I want to share with you because I had some users ask me after Focus, they went home and they tried to do it, and they said, hey, some of these are working great, some of them are not. So Microsoft is in the process of introducing more of these. So not every report has a word layout. But for those reports that do, it's going to save you a lot of time and a lot of money with your partner. So you walk through, you pick your field, so you can see down here at the bottom, you just right click, you insert your field and begin to lay out your document. And so I think most of you have probably done some word merges in the past. This is a pretty simple process. And so you can begin to lay out your form. And then once you're done, it'll import the change. And you can begin to use your new report. Now, the next piece that many folks forget is now that we've created our report, we need to go in and actually to tell the system, hey, which one of my sales invoices do I want you to use? So I go into my report selections and I pick so I pick my invoice and I determine which report I want it to use. So I assign that report, and then the next time I use that, I'll be able to see my work when I'm sending my customer my new invoice. This is also handy when we have multiple companies. So, I want different companies, obviously, to have different report layouts. And so I can create these custom reports and then assign the various reports to the particular forms that I want used in each company. Now, if I want to get a little bit more fancy, and this was one of my favorites, I could start out with my own Word template. So I could go out and actually go to Word or Office.com and go find a template. So in this case, you'll see this sales invoice that I have down third from left. So I just wanted to find one that was a little bit sexier and bring it into NAV. And so it says create. It was free. It was easy. And so I imported the layout. So you go to your custom layouts, just like we did before. You import your layout, and then it begins to lay out your report. So again, you go back to design mode, you do your XML mapping pane, and then you begin to lay in the actual NAV merge fields to the Word document that you just brought in. So I thought this was super awesome. It was fairly easy to use, and I hope that you can put this to use inside of your companies because I know many of us have spent a lot of money trying to modify forms, and Microsoft's taken a nice step here to help save you some time and money. So the last area for today, we've heard a lot about in-application design and some of the tools that Microsoft has released with Business Central. And so we've played around with this a fair bit at Innovia. And what I would tell you is that it's definitely a step in the right direction, although I wouldn't get terribly excited about it just yet. So it does allow you to personalize your screen. So if I want to add or show columns, if I want to add or show fields, I can do that. So once I click into personalize, you can see all of the fields on my screen, and so I can hide those as I choose. I can move them around on the screen, so if I want them to show up in a different order, I can do that. And so it was a fairly simple thing to do, not terribly difficult to make it go away altogether if that's what I wanted it to do. But beyond that, that was about it. Now, clearly, Microsoft has deeper plans, and I suspect that we're going to see more from the in-app developer. But that's what we had there so far. So, as you can see here, Microsoft's view of how the products are going to work together and the development that they've put in to help us improve end user ability to interface with the system without a formal development background, I think has given us some great new tools to use in our NAV. So we've got about 15 minutes left, so I'm going to open it up for questions. Angie, questions from anyone?
We do not have any at this time.
All right, we'll give it another minute or two. All right, well then we're gonna wrap up for today. Thank you all very much for taking the time to join us. I hope this has given you some tips that you can use in your businesses. And certainly if you have questions or I can help in any way, feel free to reach out to me. Thanks again and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone. And I just want to remind you that it has been recorded, so it will be available later this week on our website at innovia.com. And I just want to also let you know that our next webinar coming up in July is going to be on the 12th of July. Alan Wine will be presenting on NAV capacity. So if you're interested in attending that webinar, please feel free to register or any of our other events. And again, thank you all for attending this webinar. We look forward to seeing you on our next one. Have a great day.